Welcome to the very first Deering Acting Studio podcast. I'm here with Matthew Deering and John Luke Grubb.
Yay, I'm clapping.
Master Coach and Coach, maybe, if those are okay titles? Probably shouldn't have given you guys titles, huh?
Now I feel weird.
I don't know who's who.
That's funny.
Which one's which?
Okay.
In today's episode, we were going to do on repetition.
Yeah, repetition. That's exactly right. That's what they call it, you know. Back in Wickenburg, it's repetition.
Repetition.
That's when you repeat what's been said
Over and over and over.
I don't understand, Bill. How's that work?
You say something, I say it back.
All right, I want some of that licorice right there.
You want some of that licorice right there.
That's what I said. Pass me the licorice.
That's what you said. Pass you the licorice.
No, I'm serious. Pass me the licorice.
No, you're serious. Pass you the licorice.
Bill, you're pissing me off.
Bill, I'm pissing you off.
What are you doing?
What am I doing?
Give me the licorice.
Give you the licorice.
I don't understand this game.
You don't understand this game.
All right. Now I'm going to hurt you.
All right. Now you're going to hurt me.
So something like that? Is that kind of how it works?
That's repetition with extreme changes almost immediately.
That's called honest answer.
Yeah, 10 honest answers in a row.
So going back to serious, we use repetition here at the studio. It's what would be called a Meisner technique. It's part of the Meisner program, the 2-year Meisner program. We've got our own spin on it. And right now, we've put it into place into both the classes. Really, it's a part of the improv and the script. And you run that, right, John Luke?
I do.
So where are you guys at right now?
We have introduced simple activity and like standard of perfection.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you want to explain those things?
Yeah. So the simple activity is just some very basic activity, like people are drawing circles on paper, or they are shuffling cards, etc. It's to give the actor something to do so they can have behavior while also still being truthful and doing the repetition back and forth with an observing scene partner. That's awesome. There's also the standard of perfection, which means that they have to do their activity in a very specific way. So there's like a standard of how they're maybe drawing the circles, how far apart are the circles, etc., to give them an extra added element of difficulty while doing the repetition scene.
It is really difficult in improv to focus on your space work like that and be detailed and come up with the next idea.
Yeah, and what's interesting is in improv, that you're doing activity all the time, only it's imaginary objects that you're using. But you're always active in life, you know. That's how acting and life they connect. So we have to recreate life, and we do exercises that help us recreate the life. And then it feels weird because you're like redoing something, but technically you're always doing something, you know. And then in improv, I feel like people overdo activity. So if they're doing something, they feel like they always have to keep moving, even though that's not real life. So for instance, we're podcasting right now. And while we're podcasting, Jason is drinking coffee, right? You've had a few sips here and there, but for the most part, it's just sitting in your hand. Right.
I'm not constantly between every other word.
Yeah, you're not, because you don't do that in life. Like that'd be weird if you did. So technically, though, you're drinking coffee. Like it's sitting in your hand. Like that's the activity that you're doing in improv. Anybody's mind blown? What about you, Bill?
What about me, Bill?
All right, I'm not even going to talk to you.
All right, you're not even going to talk to me.
Improv class, I sometimes have a hard time picking the moment in a quick fashion.
What do you mean?
Like even like just forming a scene, maybe.
What do you mean?
It seems like I'm always behind just a little bit, and then every once in a while I catch up.
Yeah, well, you know, that's pretty hard. That's basically the difficulty of improvisation. So in improv, when you're given a scenario and we really give it to you like all out, you're probably fine, probably much easier. So let's just say, I'll give you guys a scenario. Your coworkers on a construction site, and John Luke, you've just recently broken up with your girlfriend. Go.
Where do you want the lumber?
Jeez, what happened to you?
Nothing. Do you want it over there?
You sure you're all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. Just tell me where I can put the lumber. It's really heavy.
You can set it over there.
Okay, thanks.
Guy looks like he's about to cry.
I'm not going to cry.
Okay, so there were some mistakes there, actually.
I'm sure there was.
Yeah, so maybe we could talk about this.
Let's do it.
So you say you feel behind in a scene, right? So in this particular case, what's interesting is what was funny was that he said, "Where do you want the lumber?" But we could feel his pain. So the answer is actually much easier than you're making it, because you decided as Jason to know what was going on instead of just playing it real.
Okay.
So it's like,
As in, I don't
where
understand.
do I
it.
want the lumber? And then you just say, over there. But when you
Okay.
say over there, you say it in such a way that you're thinking, I wonder what's going on with him today.
Okay.
And then he sets it down, And then what might you say next? It's like, hey, we got lunch break coming up, 5 minutes. And he's like, I'm not hungry or something, right? So you keep playing the situation real. And I think what you're doing is you're skipping steps and going all the way to the end.
Yep.
Versus playing the moment right now.
Because you're right. I would still want my lumber over there, even though he's sad.
And you don't know why he's sad, And probably half the time you're going to be like, well, he's not a good worker today, or he's hungover, or you're going to, like, the truth is you'd look at him and be like, what the heck's with him, I got a job to do.
How high do you think this building is?
Look, Mike, you're really distracted today.
Tony, I'm just not in a good headspace, man.
Is there a reason we need to know how tall the building is? I mean,
I'm just saying, what if someone fell off? Like, do you think they'd survive?
I mean, what is it? It looks like 4 stories. Would the person be falling from the balcony, or would they have made it all the way up through the fire risers?
I'm just curious, just for everybody's safety.
Well, I'm trying to answer the question honestly.
Let's just say,
from the balcony or from the very top, but they'd have to have a key to the fire room.
You have a key to the fire room?
Oh yeah.
Oh, can I see it?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah. So in this situation, if they were are you asking from the balcony or from the very top?
Very top. Like,
Okay.
what if one of us are working up there and we just slip? Would we
All right,
survive?
hold on. So 4.5 stories, you hit the ground.
Mm-hmm. Can you? Yeah. Do you think?
I mean, I think they would die. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I guess it depends on how they landed.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to prevent dying, probably, they would want to angle their body in such a way that their head didn't hit first.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But, I mean, who's going to fall off the roof?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that'd be crazy. I'm going to go take a lunch break.
Oh, you know what? It's not time for lunch yet.
Oh.
Did you get your keys back?
Too quick.
Oh.
Yeah.
Too quick.
Yeah, because the next scene, I'm not in it. And then everybody's like, what did you call me? Mike? Matt? What did you call me?
Mike, you're Mike.
Mike, right?
Manic Mike.
Like, where's Mike? He's been gone for a while. I don't know. Where are my keys?
That's a long 4
I
stories.
love the fact you guys both look at me and go too quick. Like,
Yeah. So interestingly enough, though, is that even though this kind of goes back to repetition, with repetition, we're saying the same thing back and forth so we can focus on not the words, but the emotion itself. And eventually, throughout the program, you get to a place where you're doing improv, where, you're not repeating, you're just going super slow enough to find the right answer to say. You're constantly waiting and finding it. And that's kind of what's happening on the improv scene. Just without repetition, saying it back and forth, you're listening at all times. So...
Or
it's harder than it looks, by the way.
Yeah, and in this scenario, there's a couple options too, right? So you could just come in and join the conversation. You don't have to know what's going on. So rather than saying, did you get your key back? You would never know that. You could just come in and go, where do you want the lumber? Or, what's going on, guys? And just be, aloof. Or you could add a piece of information. Like, what would be a piece of information that you could add that would completely throw a new obstacle around, right? So you could be like, "Hey guys, the field trip's here, all the kids, and I had plans to take them up to the fire room and show them the roof." And I'd be like, "Oh, Mike's got the key."
And to clarify for everyone listening, what we're talking about is how to write the improv play ultimately, right?
Yeah, well, improv is writing. Mm-hmm. So you're essentially writing as you go is what improvisation is. So at our level, that's the way we think of it, is we want to think of the writing being really good writing.
Yeah, as a playwright.
So our goal is to try to read plays, understand good writing and what it means to be a playwright, so that we could, try to hit the holy grail that's really impossible to hit, but to write a Broadway quality play,
just winging it,
and that's why it'll never happen. But that's what we aim for.
The perfect wave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so getting back into repetition begins in the Meisner program with very simple. We're going to repeat everything back, but what we're listening for is what's underneath. So what's important is not where do you want the lumber. What's important is, oh, he's clearly sad. But then rather than me jumping to the answer, I'm gonna listen and be curious. So my response is so let's do repetition real quick, John Luke. Just say, where do you want the lumber?
Where do you want the lumber?
Where do I want the lumber?
Where do you want the lumber?
Where do I want the lumber?
Where do you want the lumber?
Where do I want the lumber? So the transition there, if we could hear it, was he was sad. I was curious to why he was sad. He was sad. I was more curious to why he was sad. He then became pissed at me being curious. So then I became pissed back at where's this you're mad coming from? I don't understand it. So that's what happened there. Now, if the words are not important, then we do the same type of exercise. So go again.
Where do you want the lumber?
Goes over there in that pile.
All right, thanks.
You have more work to do, right?
Yeah, I know.
All right, well then do it.
Okay, I will.
Hey, Ben, welcome to work.
How's it going?
Well, good,
Sorry I was late. I was just finishing breakfast. Lovely morning.
Well, it's nice to see someone with a smile on their face.
What's your name?
Ben. He's the new guy.
Hi, Ben.
This is Manic Mike.
Nice to meet you, Manic Mike.
So that's the difference, right? It's
Manic
rather than me jumping to what's wrong with you, I notice it, but then I make a logical answer. And that's what the repetition helps us do. It's sort of like training wheels, where I'm taking the words away from you because the words usually convolute things, and you start to get in your mind and kind of rush ideas. And so the repetition is like training wheels. So it's like, I'm not going to let you say more than just repeating, but you're going to go ahead and have to feel the full gamut of feelings. It's sort of like what we did in master class for that one student who came up and couldn't handle the fourth wall. So I just planted their feet and was like, oh, you can't move. You can only move your head and you can't go this way. Well, before you knew it, by the end of the scene, that actor was going fourth wall effortlessly and didn't realize that that's what had happened because he took his mind off of his feet, right? So in repetition, that's what we're doing. And then we add these little extra levels of difficulty where we're going to add the activity in, then we're going to add in changes, then we add in like difficulty on the activity, and then eventually it gets to improv.
I noticed you said the 2-year Meisner technique. Why did you say, what's a 2-year mean?
It's just one of the schools out in New York is the
it's a
William
2-year
Esper
program?
school, yeah, and the way Meisner used to teach it back in the day was 2 years. So and it's sort of an arbitrary number because it's sort of like this is the philosophy, but it's ever evolving and it goes on forever.
Yeah,
so,
am I crazy to say that it's not something you understand and then just can do?
Well, it's something that here's the thing, by doing it for 2 years, I mean, people
That's my point.
People do
literally-
transform themselves, absolutely. But I also think part of it is like, hey, here's 2 years, now go do some stuff with it. Or also, this is a really good marketing ploy to go, let me grab you for 2 years. You know? I mean, there's all that is a part
My
of it.
point being, as in concept, in watching you guys do it, it looks very easy, and it's not if you've not trained in it for a long time.
True.
That's what my
yeah.
point is.
And we have trained extensively for hours and hours and hours and beat on like trying to figure out how to not only do it but then teach it, which is really hard. And truthfully, I don't even think either of us would claim that we know the ins and outs of every aspect of that Meisner technique to its fullest, nor will we ever, because it's just an ongoing process of learning. And for us, trying to find a new way to do it or a better way to do it for ourselves and our students so they might be able to get there faster and then move on to the next thing, because there's always going to be a next thing.
Got it. I think this is a good place to wrap it up. What do you guys think?
I don't know. What do you think, Bill?
You don't know what I think, Bill.
You messed it up. You didn't repeat.
No!
I think it's perfect, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Deering Acting Studio podcast, #1, and you guys have a fine day.
We need a sound effect of clapping.
Hey, it's Manic Mike in the morning.
You know, we had a sound effect this whole time.